It's often said that 80% of success is just showing up. But if that is true, which I highly doubt, what is the other 20%? And what should the 80% of showing up look like? Is it just about being physically present, or is there a bit more to it? Well, my guest on the show today is here to share that there is a bit more to showing up. There are different ways in which we can show up and different levels. And she's going to explain to us what those levels are and how you can shift between them according to what feels appropriate and right for you, from maybe just barely showing up to really powerfully showing up in your own life, in your business, or wherever you need to turn on the taps. My guest on the episode today is Marcy Axelrod. Marcy spent a lot of time and research looking into the ways in which people show up, especially in their professional lives, but also in their whole life. And her new book, How We Choose to Show Up, integrates neuroscience, psychology, behavioral economics, and evolutionary biology with top consulting strategies and leading business practices to help you succeed. Now, most of us wake up and start the day with barely a thought for our energy, our mood, and how we anticipate behaving and responding to people and things throughout the day. As a result, we can end up in something of an eat, sleep, repeat cycle where we run mostly on automatic. Understanding the basic different levels of showing up and how we can shift between them can be revolutionary to living a more conscious and attuned life that makes it more possible for you to affect your circumstances and interactions rather than them affecting you. Welcome to Present Influence, the show that helps business leaders develop the skills to influence, impact, and inspire. My name is John Ball. I'm a keynote coach, professional speaker, and your guide on the journey to leadership level communication and presentation skills. My mission is to provide rising business leaders like you with everything you need to maximize your impact and present with influence. Follow the show on your favorite podcast app for weekly episodes and interviews with influence experts. And if you enjoy the show and get some value from it, please do leave us a 5-star review on whichever app you are listening to us on. But for now, let's get into the show. Before I bring Marcy on, let me just say that some of the things we talk about will have some pictorial references, and Marcy has furnished me with some slides. They will be available for you in the show notes, as will links to Marcy's book, her website, and everything she talks about here in the episode. But without further ado, let me welcome my guest and showing up expert, Marcy Axelrod. Now, if you get to the end of this episode and think, wow, that was interesting, I would like to know more, we did record a part 2, and I will tell you at the end of the episode where you can go to access that if you would like to hear more of a second conversation that I had with Marcy to get even deeper on how we show up. So remember, stay tuned to the end of the episode and I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. As we started our conversation, I asked Marcy what led her to this topic. Where did it all begin?
I lost the ability to speak at age 6. It was the confluence of just moving to Boston. Mom and dad were too busy, new careers they had to launch. And it just triggered stuttering. It was a predisposition genetically. And with that, when you can't speak, you start to observe. And what I recognized day after day on the playground, age 6 in primary school, is that while I couldn't show up as I chose, everyone around me could. They could choose how they showed up. And yet I saw bullying and I saw kids mistreating each other. And I saw some kids being the scaredy cat, unable to stand up, unable to have a sense of self. I also observed the adults around me making choices. When do they intervene? And really, why weren't they coming up and providing solace to the kids who needed it and providing support to the kids who came across too strong and too aggressive? So that's really where showing up started. I conducted my first global study with hundreds of millions of data points in my late 20s as a strategy management consultant with KPMG Consulting. That was after being on Wall Street and actually observing lots of decisions people were making, how they were showing up to their wallets, their portfolios, the gyrations of the market, recognizing there's a buyer for every seller, but maybe not really thinking through the longer term. I saw a lot of short term showing up. So anyway, all of this is wrapped up in showing up. And then from all the research, of course, the model emerged. And it was so clear. So the book had to be put out there.
So we can see where this whole thing started for Marcy. And what I really wanted to get to next was what those different levels of showing up are. So here, Marcy's going to introduce us to the 3 levels of showing up.
Yeah. And I mean, John, everything in life has levels of quality. Everything. I mean, even when you look at a leaf, there's a vein through the middle. That's this primary vein. There's a shape. But from this central vein, there are offshoots. So you could say level 1, level 2 are the offshoots, and then level 3, the offshoots of the offshoots, right? So showing up, there's a way that each of us want to show up. And then there are ways that we just default. So we say, oh my goodness, like, how could I have done that? And then there's the barely there, when either you're dealing with something really intense yourself or you're just burned out. And that's kind of a level 1. So the middle level where we just show up is level 2. There's a lot of neuroscience I can explain about what happens, what the default is, what happens when we're distracted and we show up with that. And then I call level 3 the truly showing up. Here, it's a really memorable little continuum that I think helps a lot of people. But level 1, level 2, level 3. Barely there, level 1, just showing up, level 2. Truly showing up, level 3. And there's a neuroscience background to this and an evolutionary biological background. And obviously with the leaf example, or even the structure of our body, John, everything has a primary, a secondary, and then you could call it a tertiary. So there are levels in everything. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 3 is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, it's more like the context in which we exist to some degree, yeah?
Well, it's what we all aspire to. This is the coming together. It's the truly showing up as we want, leaving the legacy that we want.
One of the things I often find myself talking about in a lot of personal development trainings that I have taught over the years is how 80% of success is just showing up. Now, I'm not 100% convinced that that is genuinely true, but I do know that if you're not actually in the room when important things are happening, you are definitely not showing up. So, I mean, that expression tends to refer to physically being present, or at least being virtually present in our online environments. However, what we're talking about is the way in which we show up, not just being somewhere, but really being there, being noticeable for the level that we're showing up as. If we are in a room and we're just barely there, we're present, but we're not really interacting, can we really say that we are showing up? Are we showing up as the best version of ourselves? Not really. So let's hear a bit more about this from Marcy.
So what you're asking me about is what I call just showing up. Just showing up means a lot of things. First of all, you are largely in the left hemisphere of your brain, which is representing the past to you. So you're partially engaged. It's the shallows, right? That was just discussed years ago in that famous book by Jonathan Carr. So this is where you're there, and you might actually have an intent to do well and perform there, but you haven't really done a number of important things. You haven't really engaged your system of care for the other people. If it's just you and there aren't other people, you haven't engaged your system of care that says, why does this matter? Is emptying the dishwasher creating an environment for a smooth interaction with my kids when they come home? The other thing that you haven't done is you haven't kind of gone up to the mountain and looked down, if you will, and said, what is the real significance of this moment across the broader scale, right? What is the meaning that's about to take place? What is the impact? So what we can do is instead of that, which is level 3, we kind of level 2, just show up. We kind of just walk in, maybe another meeting just ended. Maybe we just arrived. And we kind of just walk in. And the moment that you just walk in, you aren't fully there. And then the moments take place and you aren't fully there. Or maybe you're there, but you're not. You're there, but you're not. That's a very common thing. And then afterwards, what have we truly done? Have we bonded with the people? Have we shown care? Have we manifested within ourselves the meaning of the moment for them? And when you haven't, they know. Now, maybe they haven't consciously said, Either this person doesn't really care or this person's more interested in the idea than the impact. So we just kind of move through, and that's just showing up. And
Mm.
this is when, after the days or the month or the year, you kind of look back and you say to yourself, what happened? I'm 40 or I'm 50 or I'm 35, whatever it may be. And this kind of isn't what I really wanted. This isn't what I planned. How did I get here? And there's a dissatisfaction that has crept in. And maybe your relationships aren't what you want, or your body weight, or your health, or your professional world, or your bank account. So this is the result of just showing up. It is massive.
Well, research and knowledge is all good and well, but it's one thing to know, it's quite another to do. And really, what's the whole point of all of this? Is there a transformation that Marcy is aiming to help people get to? Well, that's what we talked about next.
Oh my goodness. There are so many interwoven statistics in society right now showing that we are just not a happy, fulfilled people. People have a lack of meaning. Loneliness is off the charts, right? There's a reason that our Surgeon General Vivek Murthy wrote a book not about obesity or cancer. It's called Together. The book is about loneliness, right? And how it's worse the impact is worse on our health than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, right? The loneliness is because we feel that we're individualized selves. So that's a small s self.
Mm.
And it happens in the part of the brain where the default mode is actually engaged. It isn't the part that connects with others. So the small s self is this I, me, mine mode. And the mirror is like this, and it's facing us. And when it faces us, we're never going to really communicate and bond with others the way that we want. So this is why I'm doing it. The mental health issues that we're all dealing with, the fact that 50% of girls from ages 12 to 28 are on SSRIs to help their anxiety and depression, and then on and on. So that's why I'm doing it. From a planetary level, John, we've crossed 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries for safe drinking water, for clean air, for the rapidity of death of whole species. I mean, there's a reason we are not showing up as nature intended. Now, I'll give a short answer now to what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just lay out for people, there's actually a model, and it's really simple, of how human beings are designed to show up. And once you know it, you say, oh my God. In the back of my mind, I've known this the whole time, but seeing it's really helpful. So, have I answered your questions?
Yeah, I think so. And let me ask you, is this somewhat to do with having more of a collective mentality then, as opposed to an individualistic one?
Yes, yes, and yes. So what we're doing is we're changing from individuals to all individuals. We're recognizing that intelligence, the skills and knowledge that we need to succeed, it's not inside of us. It's in all of us. It's in the way that the world works. So we are moving from this isolated self, a small s self, to a big S self. And the big S self takes its mirror and goes like this. And that is when you feel others. I have a continuum that actually shows this. And when you feel others, guess what? Your authentic self walks into the room with you. And your fear is over there. And your imposter syndrome and all those things that hold people back just don't manifest. Because we're functioning human to human. I'm going to show you how this works. And I talk about the neuroscience, and I talk about getting rid of the things that keep us in the box. There are 4 ways people show up that keep us in the box, right? Just showing up at level 2. They are lesser than, better than, I deserve, and here's a biggie, ready? And I hope your listeners are nodding saying, yep, got it, ready? The 4th, need to be seen as. We need to be seen as. We're in presentation mode. These are discussed by the Arbinger Institute in the terrific book that they have, Anatomy of Peace, Leadership and Self-Deception. There's a number of books. But here's the continuum. You start out in self mode here. And then as you move from self-focus, you start to notice others more. Once you notice, what do? Wow, you gotta lean in. So you gotta tune in. You've noticed, you've tuned in, And then what happens? Once you've tuned in, we as humans, we naturally start to feel with. The other person isn't an object who's in your way. They're not that person who's, oh my goodness, they never support my ideas in that meeting. No, they aren't an object to push away. You're feeling with. And then you naturally go to the final stage, John, enacting care. And when you're enacting care, all those other fears and the I deserve and the lesser than and better than and da-da-da, they just dissipate because now you're enacting care and you're functioning at this much broader level. And I'll tell you, your body resets, your words flow, you're the communicator you've always wanted to be, and people feel you as well.
In your book, you are very specific about using the word attunement instead of awareness. Can you, for our listener, can you say why that is?
John, I'm so glad you brought this up. So it's not just attunement instead of awareness. It's also attunement instead of presence. I do talk about presencing. Yes. So this is really important. Although people focus on mindfulness and awareness, it's great. So awareness, I feel, leads you to the gate. It gets you to the noticing. But then it stops. It leaves you at the gate. Luckily, the universe doesn't work that way because once you notice, if you stay with it and you really presence with it, you then start to tune in and then you feel with and then you enact care. So there are 3 levels. There are 3 stages there toward truly showing up past awareness. Presence, I feel, also has that limitation. We do value presencing because otherwise the world, our left hemisphere is the one that we're living in, and it just represents the past. This is when you're partially engaged. The whole workforce disengagement thing, John, is because we show up with intermittent presence or that constant partial attention, right? What you really want to do is go beyond the kind of awareness stage and the present stage, and you want to stay with it enough to attune. Attuning is when you're feeling with. So you go from noticing to tuning in to feeling with to enacting care. And that is what you need.
Yeah. I love that. I'm thinking about tuning a piano. Everything goes, yeah, you have to get the right harmony, the right resonance. And yeah, I like that as an idea that I can feel that there's a difference with that. You also talk about the different levels of showing up. I mean, the just showing up level, is that more, you say it's kind of a default level. Is it based in apathy or why is it a default level?
Oh yeah, I love that. So why is just showing up our default? So my research shows 80% of us just show up 80% of the time. So the answer is really easy. Why do we just show up? How many of us wake up and we just have to get this done? And let me look at my schedule and I'm already partially late and I have to get the kids out the door. And I have this quote in the book, Marcy, if at 10 a.m. I have half my wits about me, I consider it a success. This is a father and he gets his kids up and he gets his kids out the door. He's a very successful person. But what he's demonstrating is what we're all doing. There's the busyness, and that's a B word. I really don't like it. And I'm actually working with a whole group of people now to develop a word to seed into the zeitgeist that's kind of the opposite of busyness, more of a gradualness. When you're busy and you're going, boop, the flow, let me bring in a physics metaphor here. The light, the wave of light, you know how it can also be a particle? That just thinking about that makes my heart cringe. What we're doing is we've taken the flow of life, the dynamism, the connectedness, the bigger picture, and we turned it into these little pieces. And when you have little parts like that, you totally miss out on the whole. Let me give you an example, John. So I'm going to describe you. You have this jovial air. You have this deep care. You have a gregarious expression. You're dedicating your life to helping others. I can go on for the whole day, but have I ever, and can I capture the essence of all of you with part, right? Descriptive, even though what I'm saying is really existential about you, even though it's deep stuff. Jane she works at the school and she does, that's not Jane. You can never with parts instantiate the whole.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're in your just showing up mode and you're in this busy mode, dude, I got a 9 o'clock meeting, then I got to stare at this spreadsheet and get this done and get a memo to this person, or I have to go and do this. Or when we're like that, we can never experience the fullness.
So here I presented Marcy with this analogy of like maybe just going down a river in a rubber ring and just being buffeted around by the currents of the water, or going down in a kayak with a paddle, maybe even a rudder, and being able to control the direction, the speed of your own journey. Fair?
Yes. Well, yes, there's steering. There's also an acceptance. Really, just showing up, right? That level 2 that keeps us from the level 3 where we really have the deep relationships, the deep meaning in life. That's level 3, right? There, the interwovenness into the fabric of how the universe is really working. And then you really flow with things. You have less stress. You stay healthier. You naturally avoid extremes of risk because people gravitate toward you, right? The phone calls come in saying, our team has a need for this. And really, I thought about you. Would you like to come in and meet with us? So what keeps us out of that flow is when we're moving too fast, we're rushed, we're too busy, and then kind of the edges of the goodness get sliced off. And this can be insufficient sleep. It can be skipping our time at the gym. It can be not making time to be with the people who really matter to us enough. So we don't meet with our friends and have the depth of expressiveness where they share their lives and we share ours. So we end up in this middle of plainness. And then we feel this wanting, or we feel a striving, or we feel a desperation, or we feel a lacking. And all of it comes really from, and I don't like the word balance, another B word, like busy. It comes from not having enough time in solitude, not having enough time to reset, not having enough decision to just sit with a journal maybe and say, here's how I feel and here's what matters. And here's what I'm going to do to orient my day toward being with what's meaningful.
I want to check in that I am interpreting what you're saying correctly, that it's to some degree being able to take that step back and have some peacefulness, be alone, have time to think, be alone with your thoughts, meditate, journal, things that I personally found very valuable in figuring out how I actually feel about things and making sense of things that are going on in my life. But it's a level of a little bit of detachment from your own life. Is that right?
Interesting, John. You say detachment. Yes, what you said is right. However, instead of detachment, which I see you could apply that in terms of not getting caught up in the mirror of the small S self and the reverberative echo of our own mind, I can see detachment working with that frame on it. To me, though, it's more of a depth of being with ourself in the big S self, which is the one that Indigenous peoples have always known about and Eastern contemplatives have spoken about. And John, I'll also point out, importantly so, the foundation of almost every religion is this oneness, and that's the big S self.
Yeah.
So it isn't so much detaching from in the way of not really caring. It is a depth of being with the big S self such that we're noticing, tuning in, and enacting care for others. And I'll tell you, John, this is when the awe shows up. This is when the wonder shows up. This is when, oh my goodness, there's that breeze. And you all of a sudden are sensing, my window's open, so I've got the breeze here.
Good.
That's what, like, wow, The fact that I have this perception system built into me that we are encased in a perceptual system. It's a semi-permeable membrane such that the outside and the inside we are not separate. We are not. We are designed such that we and the environment are one, right? There's a reason that when the sun shines down, we feel it. It's not because there's a boundary or a border. It's because we're meant to absorb it. We wouldn't exist without those sun rays. They literally sustain us, right? So maybe this is a long way of saying the more we get into and kind of swim and look within the depths of how we're designed to show up, right? This is nature's model of how we're designed to show up. Then all of a sudden we live into this togetherness and the meaning that so many of us are seeking.
Yeah. I like to think that we can only really truly understand ourselves in the context of our environment and the people around us, that we can't get that full grasp of ourselves just from self-reflection. And it seems like that's kind of related. That's kind of there as well with what you're saying.
Yeah. I really want to pick up on what the model shows that you just touched on. So we're in 3 roles at all times. This is absolutely key. Okay. We are not individualized selves. We are members of situations at every moment. And that changes every moment, determines what we think, what we feel, literally the chemistry of our body and what we do. So our thoughts, feelings, and actions are situationally prescribed. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't show up with a mode of who we are and a disposition and kind of a general state of affairs, a level of kindness, a level of patience. No, I'm not saying that all of that doesn't show up, but everything in the moment brings out with us how we show up right then. So your care, I am feeling your care from your expression, and it's changing me, and it just reset my tone and my breathing and my heart rate and what your listeners hear. Finally, there's a third role. There's a societal member role. And there is this great book that I mentioned called Selfless by Brian Lowry, a professor in the business school at Stanford. And he basically explains our society defines everything about us. So we think we're an individual, but we're really an all-individual. We are a societal member. That's why we're on this podcast. That's why we're sitting here now. That's why we're using tech. It's what everything is determined right now by what society has told us is the right way to spend our time right now. Think about that. And I'll just show you this one pie chart because this is the model of how we show up. We're 3 roles at all times. We're in 3 roles at all times. Self, situation member, societal member, and everybody. Okay? And that's what the continuum comes out of. And there's a skill for each role, but I will give you this. It's on my website.
Great. I'll have links for those in the show notes for everyone who wants to take a look at those images, and some of you will be able to see it on the video. I'll put them up there for you as well. I really like that. Do you feel then that there's a shift happening, or is the shift hopefully on the way? The one of the reasons why I guess you're part of it, but do you feel that it is happening? Do you see it in other places as well?
It's very much happening. Part of John, how it's happening, though, is that we go the other way and we get burned. And then we turn. Yeah, but tell me what you're seeing.
In terms of generality in life, I do feel that our experience is so determined by how we approach the world and where we're coming from. And I know you do talk about this because I saw it in the book as well, that like every situation we approach every experience we have is going to be determined by who we are in the moment that we're in that situation and how we're showing up. So I see that. I see myself and some of my friends having very different senses of the same kind of experiences.
Yeah.
at the moment. But I do see more and more people at least having an awareness of what's going on with other people. The people are actually keener to tune in to what and to understand other people's experiences. That's what I'm seeing as well. But I do see differences in how people show up very clearly.
For the better?
Mostly, yeah. But I think that's a lot to do with the circles that I mix in. I mix with a lot of people who want to help make the world a better place. So I think inevitably I'm going to see more positive sides of people. I was just talking about this at lunch with a friend earlier, that I have a friend who is doing, she's a psychologist and she's working with a lot of people who have some very serious dark problems. And that's a lot of that influences how she sees the world. And I have another friend who worked in child services in the UK and saw a lot of child abuse cases and was typing up notes for them all. And it started to affect her view of the world. So many things can have such a powerful impact on how we start to view the world and people and what's around us.
You just gave great examples of how our societal role shows up, right? We might feel like distinct individuals, but we are not separate from. We are societal members at least as much as individualized selves, right? So what you're saying is when you're surrounded by people who have significant mental health issues or are living in a very depressed place, that's in your ecosystem.
Right.
And that is what filters what comes to mind and how your body feels, and therefore how you behave and what you say and what you choose to attend to and how you choose to attend, right?
Yeah.
And then you who are spending your time with people trying to change the world, optimistic people, hopefully not desperate, but just that then leads you to show up a certain way, probably far more broad-minded. Seeing a bigger picture, seeing more of the flow, seeing the impact of things across time, noticing, oh, I'm noticing this going on. That's because of this other good thing here, right? So you're noticing positive things that fulfill your expectation of, look, all these people are working to change the world in a positive way. And then you fulfill look at these impacts, which are the positive things, while this other friend might be seeing negative things.
Yeah. I have very intentionally put myself in those circumstances. So I feel like I've always agreed with this principle of that we create our own lives and that we create our own experiences. So have been very intentional about that with mine. And it doesn't mean that I'm not aware that there's stuff that isn't good going on in the world and stuff like that. I'm also aware if I don't choose how I want to be appearing each day on a day-to-day basis and deciding how I want to show up, that I end up being, as in what we call in the personal development world, in effect of all those things, rather than the cause of my own emotional state.
I am loving this. Right. So this is why the word choose is circled. So what you're saying is you are choosing how you are showing up and who you are spending time with.
I realized that in this conversation with Marcy that I do very much choose the environments that I like to spend time with, what I choose to allow to go into my ears or my eyes in terms of what I watch on TV or what I choose to listen to. And that I'm probably a lot more protective of my inner world than I ever used to be. And I do much more choose. Just like I set intentions for how I want to show up each day. I set intentions for how I want meetings to go and outcomes that I want to create, or how I want to interact with other people. And also my boundaries around who I'm willing to spend time with and behaviors that I'm willing to tolerate or not. And those are generally good things in my life. But let's get back to the conversation with Marcy.
Let's talk about choice for a minute, because it's really important. So a lot of people feel that life happens to them.
Right.
And the lexicon of showing up switches to with and for. When you're with others and you're for others, you're for the greater good, let's say. Things aren't happening to you because now the world is showing up with and for you. How we use words changes what we think, and what we think changes the health of our bodies. It changes what we do. And the people who practice cognitive behavioral therapy know this well, and neuro-linguistic programming know this well, and it's very well integrated into some of the healing arts. Choice. Let's talk about choice versus decision.
Right.
What a decision does is it takes an opportunity set and it filters you down to one. That's my decision. So you're going from many to one. What a choice does is it says, what are all the options? I have all these options that are out there, all these potential paths. I'm going to choose this, and let's see. I can choose all these other things too. So choice opens up, deciding closes down. And you need both, but you have at any moment when you need to choose, you can keep in mind, I'm making a choice. I'm not making a decision.
Yeah.
It's very important. Yes. And once again, what you're really doing is you're choosing your process. You are asking, how am I showing up to the process of my options and choosing one over another, all the while knowing that I'm engaging in something that is flexible.
Yeah. This may be a bit of a sidebar, I'm not sure, but something that comes up for me as we talk about this is I'm aware that I've encountered people over time who actively avoid anything that would put them into having to be alone with their thoughts or reflect on stuff or
Right.
have a greater awareness, that they really want to stay in their own little bubble with their force field up and don't want to let anything in. I'm sure you've come across that as well. What level of showing up is that? And where do you go from there?
Yeah. That's people putting up protection. That's a defensive. And I guess sometimes it actually could be an offensive protection of people's selves. So, and you referenced, and I don't know, knowingly so, but that study that showed that the majority of people would prefer to inflict electric shocks on themselves, painful
Right.
electric shocks, and be alone with their own thoughts for 5 minutes. What do I make of that? So these are people who are trying to do well. This is not a failure. This is putting up a protective device so that people can keep going. So this is just showing up. Depending on how deep and dark it gets, it could be a level 1 barely there. But when you are able to silence your mind and focus on, let's say, your breath or how your body feels, what you're sensing, you then experience relief. Because what we're doing is silencing and creating space for our mind to just be and to reset. Thoughts can be dangerous, but they're not truth and they're not reality. They are neural events from a bunch of firing of our neurons, which, by the way, is largely random. Don't believe your thoughts. There's this great joke of, I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. My mind is a dangerous place. Anyway, it's just a funny joke. But the point is, more people practice being able to breathe and focus on something, then their thoughts won't be a scary place, and you won't need to keep putting up a wall. That phrase, I'm staying busy, that to me shows a failure of being able to engage either your sensing mode or focus on, let's say, your breath, to let your mind empty itself, and then you're safe.
There's a bit of a difference I often feel between people who are just existing and people who are really living. And this seems to refer to this to some degree. It's like some people are just kind of getting through their life, and some people
Right.
are actually having a wonderful experience of making their lives amazing in just some way, shape, or form. Has your work that you've been doing in your speaking, where do you feel that's had the biggest impact?
Yeah, I love this question. And I do want to mention the suffering that I've been doing so people can relate. So the biggest impact that The three areas where I get the most inquiry for speeches and engagements are the mental health realm, education, and I mean, this is too vague, but corporate effectiveness. But even then, it's based in trust and culture. So I launched the 2024-2025 school year for a whole new set of charter schools in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood in Brooklyn. The schools came to being starting about 12 years ago because they found that the Black and brown students in that neighborhood were falling through the cracks. And the energy and dedication and love in that room was like nothing I'd ever experienced. So my hat's off to Patience, who's the head of academic affairs there, and that entire team. That's one. On the mental health realm, I'm being asked because how we show up to mental health is absolutely massive. My daughter is 14. She just came home after almost an entire year at a level 4 mental health facility in Missouri. I'm in New York, so sending her away. Not any mother's first choice. You can imagine there's 5 years of struggle preceding that. There's the massive struggle during it. And then there's the like, how do we restart? How do we create basic trust? How do we attach as a mother and a child, starting from -10 and she's 14. So anyone hearing this, there's a lot of mental health realities going on. Every school system has 25 to 50% of kids dealing with some version of anxiety or depression or school avoidance or self-harm. Anyway, so lots to talk about there. And I'd be happy to share kind of the version of showing up designed for that population.
We were chatting a bit before we recorded today, and I was saying that your topic relates very similarly to a topic that I'm working on for my own keynote for different reasons, but they're very aligned. Like we're very aligned, and there's a lot of crossover, I think, in what we do. And one of the reasons why I selected this sort of the greater intentionality of taking more control over how you show up or actually you choose to be on a day-to-day basis was because a lot of the work that I do and want to keep doing with people is about helping them be able to present themselves effectively and clearly and to improve their communication skills, their interactiveness with other people, to create stronger cultures that can only really be done when you are taking that kind of journey yourself and you don't just show up as I'm the boss, you do what I say. It's a different paradigm of leadership from the, all right, I'm at the top of the pile, to the more servant leadership of not I'm the bottom of the pile, but I'm here to support you all and I'm here to make this a valuable place to work, a productive place to work, a place that you may never want to leave working. This is the sort of culture we want to have.
Yeah.
That's how I want people to be able to show up and to be able to get onto a stage and be natural and not be just in their heads about what's everyone thinking about me. What's this image that I have? You talked about this, having this image about I have to be this image because this is what people expect me to be in my role, that people don't get to be authentic. And so it feels to me to be very important I've chosen to go into a corporate area as well to speak about this, but is very needed there where people genuinely don't feel they can be themselves. They have to be this idea or this archetype.
This whole needs to be seen as. I'm really glad you're bringing this up, John. We can only show up based on what we believe about ourselves and how we believe the world works. So we show up into that version of reality, if you will. And then that creates how the world shows up for us. Someone may mean well, but if we're showing up to them with a mistrust or with an assumption they're judging me, we actually perceive threat from that person. I cite endless studies in the book. There's tons of science. And I explain how we perceive threat significantly more often when our perception of ourselves has concern and fear under it, being whether it's lesser than or I'm an imposter, I don't belong at the table. table, or people are going to think I'm not smart, or really I'm better than everybody, or right, I need to be seen as a certain way.
Yeah.
So we will perceive people not to be on our team. Showing up has a lot to say about this, because when we show up truly with our mirror outward, the larger as self, within our situational and societal role, as much as our self role, we aren't threatened by others anymore. Because suddenly what comes to mind, John, is, wow, last time I spoke to Jane, I remember her telling me her son was sick. And then when you walk into Jane, you say, Jane, how's your son? And then with the other person, their mother is really an elder, and they were missing work because they had to help her move into the elder care home. And that's when you say, hey, how was the move? And you aren't, and then that person feels care from you, and the entire moment has shifted. So our situational role here is really important, because there's a readiness.
Mm.
There's things that you can plan. I have a meeting at 3. I want to show up a certain way. I have my talking points. I have what I put on. I run. That's the plan. But life is impromptu. Because the moment emotion shows up, your plan is out the door.
Yeah.
So the skill for our situational role, I use the word readiness, and I explain what that means. And it comes from within, about how are you showing up to all of your roles and to everything that's about to go on. And I explain how to prepare for that, such that you're not living a strategy. You're actually living an attuned, engaged moment after moment. And that's when you look back and you just have a sense of meaning. And you feel good about who you are.
I think it's always occurred to me that if you're trying to be someone or something that isn't authentic to you, that situations are only ever going to chip away at that
Yeah.
and make you feel less than. Whereas when you are showing up genuinely, you have that flexibility, the flow, as you say, you have the room to be able to maneuver around because you are in your natural self. There's nothing chipping away at that. You can only really grow. It's like the, I guess, Carol Dweck growth mentality,
Yes.
growth mindset kind of concept there. It's so important for people to be able to do this and step out of really just the presets. People are living on automatic.
That's just showing up.
As a slight sidebar to this, what that was really about relates to a lot of Carol Dweck's work on mindset and having the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. The fixed mindset thinks that you're already pretty much whatever you're going to be, whatever talent you have, that's all the talent you have. Whatever level of intelligence you have, that's your level of intelligence. That's what you're stuck with. So anything that then makes you feel a little less than that is taking something away from you. The difference is that with a growth mindset, none of your levels are really set or defined in that kind of way. It's much less limited thinking. And an example of this would be if you get some feedback, maybe as a speaker, that maybe some elements of your talk weren't good, or maybe you deliver this talk, maybe you've delivered the talk specifically for feedback and the feedback isn't generally great. Or maybe you put some jokes in, they didn't land and it wasn't humorous, and people are letting you know that. It can feel rough, but look, if you have a fixed mindset, you're going to think, oh, that didn't work. I'm never going to try that again. That was useless. I was crap, whatever. But if you have a growth mindset, you think, okay, that didn't work, but let's work on it. Let's see if I can improve on that. There's room for growth and development. I can do better and I will be better in the future. So the fixed mindset is very much a limiting mindset. The growth mindset is very much an expansive mindset. And that does relate to what we're talking about here. But back to the episode.
That's just showing up.
Yeah, to give that, first of all, the awareness, or the attunement, I should say, because that's far more important. To have that attunement into that there's a better way to be. I know we're heading towards the end of time, and I do think we're going to have to bring you back on because there's so many things I still want to discuss with you. But do you feel that we are all those 3 levels just at different times?
Absolutely. So the continuum I showed of levels 1, 2, 3, from barely there to just showing up to truly showing up, we're dancing along that every moment of every day. So maybe you've had a good night of sleep. you wake up and all of a sudden the sun is shining more brightly and you have novel thoughts and you're level 3 and truly showing up. Your daughter comes down and you're able to look into her eyes, and there is a moment that she'll never forget. And it just happens. That is level 3. But then, oh my goodness, I'm late for my 9 a.m. And we then shifted to just showing up mode. Really want to reground us in the fact that we have 2 attention systems. We have the right hemisphere, which is the big picture, flowing, relational, presencing, living. And then we have that left system, which is everything's an object. I'm just getting stuff done. I want to have control over this and power over that. And this is the word of code and abstraction. And all of a sudden you're living on a map. The person's a thing. You're not living anymore in the richness of the full territory. I really want people to understand that. So that gets at what you're saying about how to leave the whole performative mode behind.
Yeah.
And how to truly show up more often and just choose how you're flowing, because we are flowing, as you say, up and down all the time. And so is everything else. So is the news that we see and what the neighbor chooses to say, and everything is showing up.
It's interesting. One of the things that we'll probably have to get to another time, but I'm very aware that there was a period of my life where I got some help with this, but I wasn't allowing myself to fully experience my own emotions. I had to consciously try and process them first to know that it would be okay. So I was never really allowing myself to fully feel my emotions. And I think there was a level of fear and somewhat control about that once that shifted, it was certainly a strange experience, but it was utterly transformative to be able to do that and move into experiencing the world more, rather than trying to just make sense of it all and trying to logically make sense of emotions when emotions aren't always logical.
And so how did you get rid of this fear? This sounds transformative, John.
It was. I was at an NLP training in Dublin, and one of the trainers there did some neurolinguistic patterns with me that just helped me to recognize that's what was really going on, and that it was against my own true nature. And that it was just from there that I started to give myself permission to experience my emotions more fully, but utterly transformative.
So these are word patterns that you
Yeah.
went through? Are you willing to share some of it?
Oh gosh, I don't think I can even remember now. I did have it ingrained in my memory for years, almost exactly what he said. I'd have to look up the word pattern that he used, but it was very clever. And it was just like flicking a switch for me. It's like, yeah, it's okay.
Wonderful. And is it things like you are perfect the way you are, right? You don't need to perform a certain way.
It really wasn't. It was more of it was more of like an instruction of, in doing the thing that you're doing, you are giving yourself the thing you don't want instead of the thing that you do. And it was more along that kind of line that I remember, but I'll have to look it up and speak again.
Yeah.
I'll bring that into the conversation, but it changes everything when we can actually allow ourselves to be an emotional person, and it doesn't mean you're going to cry all the time, or that you can't keep control of that. It's far from it. It just actually means that you can experience things. It gave me a greater level of flexibility in interacting with people. It gave me a deeper care for the people around me, because all of this is kind of like leading people to deeper empathy, deeper emotional intelligence, right? It's all kind of connected in. So I did go and check in with my NLP manuals, which I still have. And so this process came under what was listed as quantum linguistics, which is it's kind of a bullshit title, but nonetheless, this particular technique that I was referencing was called a behavior destroyer. So the behavior that was being destroyed was one of feeling the need to process my emotions to keep me safe before I could allow myself to feel them, and therefore never fully experiencing my emotions. So the technique went something along the lines of anything less than, let's say, fully experiencing your emotions without reserve isn't protecting yourself from the full force of your emotions, isn't it? It's not just about self-protection, preservation, isn't it? Something along those kinds of lines. Now, I don't remember exactly how that technique was done with me. I might have it written down somewhere. It would take me hours to go through all those kinds of notes, which I don't have. But that's just for those who are interested and who maybe have studied NLP. That was essentially the technique that was used on me.
Yes, if it's okay, I really want to comment on that.
Please.
Emotional intelligence. When we are whole beings, we don't separate our emotions from the rest of us. The cognition that we label with the word intellect is really something we should push back on, because the skills and knowledge that we need to be who we want to be aren't just inside of us. It's really in all intelligence, and that's a show up word. It's part of the show up lexicon. If we just rely and say we need to be a certain way, and it's all about our ability to think a certain way, and it's all in the frontal lobes, that's actually not right. And it leads us to separate from our intuition and our emotion. We are designed to be intuitive. We are designed to see a stranger like far away and sense friend or foe. That is not in words, and it's not right. It is an intuitive thing that shows up as intuition first, emotion second, cognition third. So we don't want to live in the cognition first because we're missing our truth. And then we get all mixed up. So we can't rely on the words and we can't rely on thoughts. As I said, they're just events. So my sense is that the shift that you made enabled you to reconnect with your core. This is nature. This is how we're designed to flow. And the more that we can open to it by creating space, living in a gradualness where we can just breathe and feel ourselves, then the leadership, the friendship, the meaning just shows up. And I explain how this happens.
Yeah. If you're open to it, I definitely would love to have a part 2 of this conversation, because I think that there's just so much still to explore. And this is a really wonderful area that it is such a simple part, or seemingly a simple part that of life that so many of us actually just missing out on. And it is like that.
Yeah.
About being people's own lives are passing them by, and that's why this is so important. I wonder, before we do finish today, whether there is like one simple thing you might be able to share that could help somebody to be a little more present, to show up a bit more, to show up more level 3 today.
Yeah, thank you for asking me that. There is a really simple thing, and it's switching us from our cognitive mind into our bodies. So and I have this at the end of both of my TED Talks. I've gotten such good feedback. So you take 2 fingers, ideally your right hand if you're right-handed, and take out your left palm, and you just draw a 3. For level 3, truly showing up. Really, you could draw anything. The point is, feel your palm, because when you're doing that, you're switching into your sensing mode. Are you doing this? Raise your
I'm
hand.
doing it. I have it right here. I'm doing it. Yeah.
So just stay. Don't listen to me anymore. Stay with your palm and trace it slowly up and down. Trace your 3 and feel your palm. And what you'll notice is all those fears and all those concerns and all the stuff in your head is gone. And you're feeling your palm. And maybe what arises is, wow, this is incredible that I can feel this. Now you have gratitude. But either way, even without that, you're putting yourself into your body. Tapping does this. To a certain extent, yoga is doing the same thing because you're feeling your muscles. It's putting you into your body. And it shifts how you show up. Even if you do this for 10 seconds and stop, you are showing up differently immediately after. And then the next moment is after, right? So your situational reality has shifted.
That's awesome. It's a really simple tool. I could feel that when I was practicing it. And naturally, the curve of the hand fits very well with the three as well. But just tuning into that, such a simple, almost meditative kind of technique that does just give you that, brings you into the present moment. I think anything that brings you more into the present is got to be a good thing. Marcy, well, I will very much look forward to a part two, because this has been a really wonderful conversation, and there's so much more I think you can get to with this, if you're good for that, and we will set that up. But I think for our audience, for our listener, it's a good opportunity to decide how you're going to show up today for whatever you've got coming after listening to this.
I love that, John. Thank you. And you can do this technique 20 times a day, 100, like any time that you recognize you're feeling stressed, or you're just going through the motions, or you feel rushed or irritable or hungry or angry or irked, any of that, that is saying, okay, I need to just take out my palm and do this. And what you'll notice, you're going to exhale and your whole body's going to shift.
Well, people can go and get hold of a copy of your book already. And so I've been having a good look through that myself. So I recommend to go and get hold of a copy of that. And I'll have details in the show notes for anyone who would like to come and connect with you and find out more as well. So if you want to know more about Marcy, go and visit the show notes, and you'll have all the links you need there. But just for me to say, Marcy, thank you so much for coming and being a guest on Present Influence.
John, it's been such an honor.
Marcy, at the end of the interview, wanted me to let you know that the book is available on Amazon for download as a PDF version book or e-reader book for just 99 cents. And if you have Kindle Unlimited like I do, because if you're an avid reader, it's a good thing to have. You can get all sorts of books, and it only costs you one set fee a month. It's available for free through Kindle Unlimited. So highly recommend that for Kindle Unlimited users. Go and check it out. Now, we did do a part two, and I said at the start I would share with you how you could access that. What you would need to do is come and join me on the Present Influence newsletter, which at the moment is on LinkedIn, will soon be available to my ConvertKit subscribers as well, which is now just Kit, I believe. And so for this particular episode, you will need to be subscribed to the Present Influence newsletter on LinkedIn. That is where you'll find the link to the episode. I did really very little editing to that other episode, just a quick introduction, and then just shared the chat with Marcy. That is a bonus for anyone who's enjoyed this conversation and would like to hear more of what Marcy and I talked about. We covered a little bit of the same ground, but we certainly went into some more depth and hit on a few more things as well. Interesting area. I have my own take on some of these things as well, but I loved what Marcy had to say. I'm not one of those people who's like particularly spiritual or religious or thinks the universe is a conscious thing. I don't believe the universe exists, but I'm also not arrogant enough to think that I have all the answers, or that what I believe is necessarily right. I just maybe have a little bit of skepticism, and I think that's always a good thing to have. There are times, though, where it's useful or helpful to take on a particular belief just to get something or to make something work for yourself. Like, for example, not that I've ever been through any kind of 12-step program, but generally they tell you to sort of let go and let God. Well, if you don't have any kind of God belief in it, they'll say, oh, let go and let the universe, or whatever you want to do. But you need to have some kind of belief in a higher power beyond yourself. Even if you don't have that, if you are pretty much an atheist like I am, you can still come up with something. You can still kind of adopt it without having to take on the belief. So I think there are times when you can sort of take on a belief because it's useful to you, or because it helps to get you a practical result. And that's where I am here with this as well. There are certain words that you would have heard in the episode that are very much, as Marcy said, that the lexicon of showing up as she has created it. For me, sometimes that sort of personalized lexicon can make things a little harder to access for people. But I get very much where she's going with that. I don't think it was overly complicated. But I prefer myself to keep things in the realm of language that we commonly use, rather than creating a lexicon that is specific to what I talk about. That's my own personal preference and some of my thoughts on this. I think there are many levels of how we show up and many different ways to look at that. But I did find the conversation valuable, and I hope you did too. I will be back next time with an episode where I'm going to be introducing the stories that I'm going to be putting into my own keynote presentation. So I'll actually be spending a little bit of time talking about why I've chosen those stories, how I've constructed them. They're going to be works in progress as well, showing you how they fit into the keynote as a whole as part of my keynote creation process series. So if you've been following that, then that's something hopefully to look forward to. If you haven't, you can go and check out those previous episodes in the Present Influence back catalog. Also, I'd just like to share with you right now, I finally got back to working on my book. It's a work in progress. The first third of the book is pretty much done. And I think probably in the new year, I'll be ready to publish it and share it with you all. So I'll keep you posted on the progress with that as well. Lots going on in Present Influence world, and I hope lots going on for you as well. If you'd like to know about how you can work with me, then please do get in touch. You can email me, john@presentinfluence.com, or connect with me through LinkedIn. I tend to spend a lot of time there, and you'll probably see I'm pretty active. And if you're going to check out the newsletter, well, why not stop and say hello whilst you're there? That's pretty much it for this week, but I hope you'll come and join me again. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. And wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, have an amazing week. See you next time.